Welcome to Black and Gold Digital Edition, a behind-the-scenes look at your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hi, and welcome to our digital show. I'm Jay Puskar alongside Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski, and we're starting out with the triple box. And guys, we're going to begin with the Steelers losing the first time in 2020 to the Washington football team. Kent, what did you take away from that game? Another difficult performance for the Steelers, especially in the red zone. No running game. It was a sloppy game all around for the Steelers.
Yeah, it looked like a tired football team to me. And, you know, again, a lot of the same mistakes that have been plaguing them, you know, this month. And I even said at the beginning of the month that they were a team playing on the edge, and I still think they're that way. And until they can figure some things out offensively and get a more balanced attack, I think it's going to continue through the rest of the month here, possibly into the playoffs, unless they can figure some things out.
Mike, you don't want to make any excuses, but how much is the schedule and the changes that have taken place over the last 3 to 4 weeks for the Steelers really become a factor in just trying to keep a normal routine and have that mental edge going into a football game?
Yeah, I think it finally it reared its ugly head. Some of the mistakes, the lack of practice time, the changing around of practice time. I think just the wonky schedule and just having to readjust did catch up with them. They're not going to use that excuse. They wouldn't. They won't. But I honestly think that it kind of did come up and bite them a little bit. And some of the small areas that you don't really think about, too. I mean, consider the kicking situation with not having Chris Boswell. I think that could have decided this game as much as anything. You got a guy in Matthew Wright who's called up last second practice squad. He performs when he's called upon, 2 extra points, knocks in a 37-yard field goal, his first ever NFL field goal attempt in a game, knocks it in. But late in the game, it's tied. It's 4th and 1. And they don't feel comfortable sending him out there because it's a little bit outside his range and what they felt comfortable with. And not having Chris Boswell comes back to really hurt them because, my personal opinion, I think if they kick that field goal with Boswell out there feeling confident and make it, I don't think they lose this game.
And guys, you never really want to kind of point fingers at play calling or, you know, decisions that coaches make throughout the course of a game. But, you know, it's back-to-back weeks that, you know, they're at a 1st and goal situation turning into a 4th and goal, and they opt to go for it, and they've failed. And Kent, you got to like the opportunities of having that confidence in your offense, but, you know, if they're not delivering, it's a real shot in the arm for them and the confidence taking a hit. Yeah,
I mean, and Mike Tomlin often says we don't like to live in our fears, but to me, that's as much living in your fears as I've ever seen. You know, when you don't want to go to a kicker, that's what he does. He kicks field goals, and you brought him in to kick field goals, and instead you're on 4th and 1, you're throwing to a lineman or you're throwing to a running back that's not familiar with that type of game. I mean, if that's not living in your fears, I don't know what is. So that's not having confidence in a run game that you can get 1 yard. And like Tomlin said in his press conference, if you can't get 1 yard, you don't deserve to win the game, and they didn't.
Well, it's a loss in either way, and, you know, they just turn the page now and look forward to taking on Buffalo, and it's going to be a great matchup. I mean, on paper, you got 2 teams that are going in the right direction for the most part. I mean, especially for the Buffalo Bills. They're on a great streak right now. A huge Monday night victory in Arizona against the San Francisco 49ers, but this is a good Buffalo Bills team that last year went into Heinz Field, beat them 17-10, and Josh Allen, Mike, just continues to play better and better. He was named the Offensive Player of the Week out of the AFC, and what's your take going into this matchup with the Bills?
I just think it's funny that the narrative has completely changed. I mean, 3 weeks ago, everyone's talking about how they collapsed at Arizona against the Cardinals going into their bye week, and you know, a lot of people really were kind of sleeping on this Buffalo team, even though they've been atop the AFC East pretty much all year, and they started off the season really well. I think a lot of people kind of just threw them aside, put them on the shelf, and said, okay, like, prove it to me. Last 2 weeks, they've come out and played really well, and they've had their issues, too. They've had turnover problems 2 weeks ago against the Chargers, but now all of a sudden, they're like the favorite in this game, even though they're 2 games worse in the standings than Pittsburgh. I know they're at home, but it's just kind of funny to me how the narrative has kind of changed ever since, you know, Pittsburgh loses their first game, and all of a sudden, well, they can't even beat Buffalo. It's like, well, they could. I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a competitive game. But no, Josh Allen's played really, really well this year. He has not been a problem for that team. And really, I think he's cut down on the turnovers. He's cut down on those kind of reckless plays where I think a lot of times last year you were holding your breath, hoping it wasn't going to be a catastrophic mistake. And instead, he's turned a lot of those plays into even more big plays that he's capable of making.
And Kent, with this Steelers defense, we've been singing their praises for the last 2 years now. And all of a sudden, the injuries are really starting to mount up for them. Bud Dupree is out for the rest of the year. Devin Bush was out earlier this season. Joe Hayden gets nicked up. Robert Spillane. I mean, this has got to be some worrisome moments for the Steelers defense, especially their playmakers that, go out there and record sacks and if not get takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you lose, 2 starters like that on, and then even a starter that came in to start and back up a starter, it throws the whole schematics of that defense off, I think, because Vince Williams now calling the plays. I mean, so it shakes everything up, and a lot of football is a game of inches and timing, and I think that showed its ugly head here in this game. But there's still enough talent on that team to make the necessary stops, and maybe they're not going to be as good as they were, but they can be good enough to make enough stops to give the offensive side of the ball some opportunities. And on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you got to catch the football. I mean, it 14 drops now in 2 weeks? I mean, guys, I went to Catholic school for 8 years of my life, and I know when I misspelled a word, I was on that blackboard writing that word down 100 times. I think that's maybe what these Steelers receivers maybe need to do, at practice, catch a couple of 100 balls, per day to, get used to catching that football, which they get paid a lot of money to do. I don't understand it.
Well, speaking of which, how were the hands at recess when it came to playing football?
Well, pretty good. I was actually, dodgeball champion, in 5th grade. It was a tough out.
Good hand-eye coordination starting young. Well, guys, there was some good news as well, at least for the Steelers offensively. James Conner coming back to the lineup, getting off of the reserve COVID-19 list. That's got to be a big, big boost for them. The struggles are certainly there with the running game. The numbers are certainly proving it with the lack of any sort of production. The fact that James is at least going to be in the lineup, as we assume he will be on Sunday, that's got to be a big boost for the Steelers offense, Mike.
No doubt about it. You go back and look at the early games in the season, first 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, he's going for 100 yards almost every single game, and you'd like to see them get back to that, establish the run, and a big part of that would be getting out to a fast start, getting a lead. I think that's going to be huge in this game. Whoever kind of sets the tempo, sets the tone, I think that's going to be big. But yeah, you can't settle for another game like Monday night where it's 14 carries for 21 yards. You're having a goal line stand where you fail to score on a 4th and 1 there. I think they had all 4 plays from the 1, if I'm not mistaken, with Benny Snell and company down there. So you'd have to hope that Conner can kind of get back to his form, and it might take a little bit to get there. But like I said, trying to get a lead early and kind of play with the way they want to script the game with Randy Fichtner, the offensive coordinator, I think that'll be big.
And Kent, just to kind of piggyback off of those statements, what are you looking forward to as far as this matchup the most? For me, it's just the battle of the wide receiving core. I think Buffalo's got a great trio, if not, 4 outstanding receivers, guys that can come out of the backfield as well, making catches. And as you pointed out, if the Steelers can start making catches, they've got a pretty good wide receiving core as well. We've seen it throughout the course of this regular season, but it's just the last 2 weeks they've had the yips. What are you looking forward to the most between the Bills and Steelers?
I want to see a little bit more of a balanced offensive attack and use James Conner the way that James Conner was meant to be used. I mean, he's great catching the ball out of the backfield. I want to see some swing passes to him, or, establish the running game a little bit more. Don't abandon it so quickly. You have to be able to, you can't go open up a game with 2, 3 and outs. It just makes your defense more tired when they're out on the field that long. So I want to see them have a more balanced attack and the wide receivers make the plays that they need to make. Catch the ball when the ball's there. I mean, I know Ben was taking some heat, that on himself that he wasn't, putting the passes where he needed to. But I think those were all catchable balls, and if they step up and make those plays, they would have won the game against Washington. So. But if you do that against Buffalo, you're going to lose the same way.
Lastly, guys, Mike, we'll start with you. Over under, how many passing attempts Roethlisberger will have? We'll cap it at 51.5.
Oh, that's really hard not to take the over with how things have been going, but I'll go against the grain and take the under for now. I think you've got to try to limit it to less than like 45. I think that would be a good goal to have. But again, they've proved that they can win plenty of games if they throw that many times, and hopefully they can establish that run and do that. I'll take the under, but I'm not feeling great about it.
I think San Francisco had some luck running the ball against Buffalo. If this Pittsburgh can get that running game going, then we're talking 30 and 30 range passes for Ben.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, especially the recess star to my left. Really appreciate the time, as always. Looking forward to the matchup between the Bills and the Steelers. So for, once again, Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski, I'm Jay Puskar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for Black and Gold Digital Edition.